Hi all and welcome to 2020, Year of Vision. I'm starting to see things already. Right, we have a fairly packed show again, and it's the first normal show, if we can call it normal. I don't know what is normal anymore, it's certainly not on this show anyway. And I hope you all liked the end of year reviews, and it was a small recap of the Thursday shows, and that largely left out the most listened to shows in many ways. And part 1 through 4 revealed much as what has been going on in the past year in what was a whirlwind of revelations, revealings, and it went deeper into many of the hidden narrative and the hidden world, most of which is only available on this show, particularly the intel aspect anyway. Now, part 5 was about us. It laid out where all the problems lay, not just the 1% either, but all of us. And once the finger pointing outside of everyone and everyone else is to blame, then the solutions to the problems can be discussed, planned and also applied. Some picked up on one particular line of part 5. THI may not continue right throughout this year. Will you miss me? But that means certain other things may have taken place, and I'm moving into some different hats that will still be based on what we're doing. Part 5 also revealed how all colours have blame, faults and issues of a lack of caring and looking after each other. Never mind looking after other colours. And I'm glad to see many of you got a lot out of it. Message of support and concerns for all the people of Australia, and particularly those connected to THI. This smacks of California to me, and I suppose it was due, or perhaps it was due, the latter being the main piece. Now, following consultation with many members about a slight change for the next few months in regards to the shows, and what will likely start from next Thursday is a live rerun of the From Russia with Love series 1 through 8C. Now, this will replace the normal show, which will still be done every other week until the series is completed. Added bits will be added to each episode to give you a bit more background as we go through it. And there will also be intel at the beginning if that crops up. So it'll be a week of From Russia with Love with intel and a week of normal shows alternating every other week. Now, I suspect many will get a lot more out of a From Russia with Love rerun, as you all now have an expanded knowledge and understanding since that series first started. I suspect it may play a bigger role going forward. It already has now, as it winds around the globe. Where are we next? The impeachment delay as forecast on this show, and why. Feinstein and other Democrats are now getting a bit pissy with Pelosi, and she is stating she needs to know the rules of engagement before the trial. What utter BS that is, Pelosi. The truth is, she should be on trial for treason, wasting public money and stifling the government, and somebody somewhere needs to do something with Facelift Central, and quickly. Liability. A new Cobra interview is being conducted with the Sisterhood of the Rose to bring more awareness of the Age of Aquarius activation. For those that remember From Russia with Love 8C, oh dear, Sisterhood of Anu, essentially, and that is the Dark Witches from the Sirius group.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Then we got a piece from one of our members, which said, not in a million years that I think I would hear a Serbian Orthodox priest talk your talk and walk your walk. How wrong was I? In a wide awakening movement that is taking place across the former Yugoslavia, and the Serbian people, some priests are leading in preaching the truth over there. She said, I wish there was an English version, but a lot of historical truth is coming out from archaeological findings and historians who would not accept standard teachings, linguists, physicists, army personnel and engineers, etc. You know, that's good to hear. Lots of people are now covering aspects of our show, which is why certain discredit clowns continue to play their failed agenda programme. And the latest I see is David Crayford, who is a legal counsel for the United Nations OITC. It appears he's bought a Fisher-Price spy kit as well, was apparently THI is based in Glasgow in the UK. Oh dear. These people are stupid. Where are we next? Then we had the voters being disenfranchised in Shasta County, or Shasta, or Shyster, the more prominent term for that region. California, there was no Republican tick box to vote on the main voting page. Oh my. Who needs fake Russian collusion when you have Pelosi, Feinstein, Brown all in one state? Fascism, dictatorship, anyone? It's the same protagonists again. Now, law enforcement officials have arrested a Virginia lawyer involved in litigation over the health risks of Monsanto's Roundup weed killer product, with prosecutors accusing him of trying to extort an unnamed company into a $200 million consulting fee with his legal firm. Timothy Litzenberg was charged with interstate intentions to extort, according to the US Department of Justice. Now, Litzenberg represented a former school groundskeeper win a $289 million lawsuit last year against agribusiness giant Monsanto, which has been linked to cancer. No, it does cause cancer, as has been proven. Unfortunately, the settlement was later reduced to $78 million. And in the Justice Department complaint, federal officials didn't name Monsanto as the company Litzenberg allegedly tried to extort, and instead described Litzenberg's companies as Company 1 and Company 2. We all know who they are. Now, a Cook County judge has ordered Google, or Google, to turn over Jussie Smollett's emails, photos, location data and private messages for an entire year as part of the special prosecutor's investigation into the fake attack on the actor. Now, 2 sweeping search warrants obtained by the Chicago Tribune provided the first public glimpse at the direction of the probe by the special prosecutor Dan Webb more than 4 months into the investigation. Now, the warrants, which were filed last month in circuit court, Source: a trove of documentation from Smollett and his manager's GoOgle accounts. Not just emails, but also drafted and deleted messages. So you can't even hide your deleted messages, oh my. And also any files in their GoOgle Drive cloud storage services, any Google voice text, calls and contacts, and search and web browsing history, and also location data. Quite a list. Now, Smollett, who stated he was a victim of racial and homophobic attacks, when it was all fake and staged to play the race agenda for and by the media. That's the top and bottom line of it. In my opinion, he needs to go to jail for that. You know, the white and black people have done enough violence and hate on each other based on lies without people fabricating it. It needs to stop. It's a program being ran by the think tank groups and also the portal people. You know, you've seen much evidence of that in the shows. Former New York and 2020 Democratic presidential candidate Mike Bloomberg hired a contractor that used prison labour to make campaign calls. And a long-time spokesman for Bloomberg tweeted that the prison labour had been used by a vendor of a vendor of a vendor. Sounds like Rumsfeld, that to me. And he added, he didn't know about it. Yeah, right. And we would never have allowed it. Yes, you did. Now, Bloomberg, whose net worth exceeds 50 billion, is pouring cash into his campaign, which is going to be a complete waste of time. And the campaign had a contractor that used prison labour to make calls on their behalf, and the former New York mayor White House bid. You know, I'm not too sure that that's not got legal issues doing that. Now, the Intercept was the first that reported Procom, which is a New Jersey-based company that was hired by the Bloomberg campaign through a third-party vendor, and it operates 2 call centres out of state prisons in Oklahoma. And in at least one of those prisons, a minimum security women's prison outside of Tulsa, inmates were contracted to make calls on behalf of the candidate. Now, Stu Loaiza, or Loser, a long-time spokesman for Bloomberg, confirmed that the prison labour had been used, as he put it, a vendor of a vendor of a vendor. Yeah, right. Whilst on New York, yes, we cover New York quite a lot. Why? Because a lot of skullduggery goes on there. It's that simple. You know, and this latest move does not surprise me, and it will certainly not surprise our members, knowing the levels of criminality within that state. So they have posted new state laws in New York that came in on January the 1st, and it's a bail reform category eliminations, which enables people to be released from custody for the following crimes. Take note of them. Manslaughter in the 2nd degree, aggravated vehicular homicide, criminally negligent homicide, assault in the 3rd degree, aggravated vehicular assault, making a terrorist threat, criminal possession of a gun on school grounds, criminal possession of a firearm, criminal sale of a firearm to a minor, arson in the 3rd and 4th degree, money laundering in support of terrorism in the 3rd and 4th degree, promoting or possessing an obscene sexual performance by a child, no surprise for that state, aggravated cruelty to animals, overdriving, torturing and injuring animals, animal fighting except cats, unlawful imprisonment in the first degree, coercion in the first degree, grand larceny in the first degree, criminal possession of a controlled substance in the first and second degree, criminal sale of a controlled substance in the first and second degree on or near school grounds, specified felony drug offences involving the use of children, including the use of a child to commit controlled substance offence, and criminal sale of a controlled substance to a child, criminal solicitation in the first degree and criminal facilitation also in the first degree, patronising a person for prostitution in a school zone, failure to register as a sex offender, obstructing governmental administration in the first and second degree or by means of self-defence spray device, bribery and bribe receiving in the first degree, bribe giving for public office, promoting prison contraband in the first and second degree, resisting arrest, hindering prosecution, tampering with a juror and tampering with physical evidence, aggravated harassment in the first degree, directing a laser at an aircraft, criminal possession of a weapon in the fourth degree, enterprise corruption and money laundering in the first degree. As you can see, there's certainly enough categories in there that's going to affect some of the clowns that are going to be arrested. And the government needs to do something about that, in my opinion, given the money laundering, child issues and all kinds of other things that they've suddenly taken off the list. And a defendant, it says now, those crimes I've just listed, a defendant must be released from custody without bail for all those crimes just listed. New York again. Go-Ogle parent Alphabet will no longer use an intellectual property licensing scheme known as the double Irish or Dutch sandwich, which allowed it to delay paying US taxes, according to the 2018 tax filings. Now, a Go-Ogle spokesman on Tuesday confirmed it would scrap the licensing structure, saying this was in line with international rules and followed changes to US tax law in 2017. Now, the Dutch filings, which were seen by Reuters, which is run by the CIA, showed that in 2018 Google moved 21.8 billion euros, which is roughly $24.5 billion, through its Dutch holding company to Bermuda, which was up from 19.9 billion in 2017, and Google said they will end this practice after 2019. Now, a date of termination of the company's licensing activities has not yet been confirmed by senior leadership. However, management expect that this termination will take place at the end of 2019 or during 2020. Now, for more than a decade, Dutch, Irish and US tax laws allowed Go-Ogle to enjoy an effective tax rate in the single digits on its non-US profits, around a quarter the average tax rate in the overseas market. And the subsidiary in the Netherlands was used to shift revenue from royalties earned outside the of the United States to Go Ogle Island Holdings, which is an affiliate based in Bermuda, where companies pay no income tax. And the tax strategy was legal, it always is with them, and allowed Go Ogle to avoid triggering US income taxes or European withholding taxes on the funds which represent the bulk of its overseas profits. Now, under pressure from the European Union and the United States, Ireland in 2014 decided to phase out the arrangement, ending Go Ogle's Irish tax advantages in 2020. Meanwhile, Go Ogle owe the Irish government $13 billion, of which the Irish government has refused to accept it. You can't make this stuff up. You know, that 13 billion can go with helping the Irish people, a lot of them out of poverty. No, we don't want 13 billion. Well, the people do. Send it to the People's Club, we'll do something with it. Subintel. A Russian ship off the east coast of America was reported for acting suspicious. What, just going through water? That's what ships do. And was described by the Portal people as a spy ship. It always is, isn't it? Russian ship off American coast equals spy ship. NATO-led ship off coast of Russia ignored or described as a security measure. Or American ships in the Straits of Hormuz or the South China Sea, and the media cries foul if ships there are challenged for being in other countries' waters. Why the inconsistencies? It's unreal. We reported about these, of course, it came up in part one because certain MS-13 gangs came to where Kim and I reside and tried to do ill deeds, which failed. But it's not just, they're all over the United States, all paid for by certain agencies and to do the dirty work. So I'm kind of pleased that nearly 100 members of the MS-13 gang have been arrested as a part of a New York takedown, which is interesting in and of itself. And officials say that 96 members of the violent gang were arrested as part of a 2-year-long investigation. Suffolk District Attorney Timothy Sinai said it's the largest in New York State history, and a special grand jury indicted 45 gang members, 19 associates for murder conspiracies, drug trafficking, weapons possession and sales, gang violence and other offences. Now, the suspects, who range in age from 16 to 59, were a mix of US citizens, legal residents and illegal immigrants. MS-13 is a ruthless, savage gang, Sinai said at the news conference, pointing to a machete that was recovered by law enforcement, and they will attempt to recalibrate and send individuals to take up leadership roles in Suffolk County, and that's why we have to stay vigilant. In a December memo that was obtained by NBC, Under Secretary of Defence for Intelligence Joseph Kernan and James Stewart, Acting Under Secretary of Defence for Personnel and Readiness, said the DNA testing were targeting military members with discounts and other undisclosed incentives. I wonder which show covered that. Now, tests that provided alleged health information have varying levels of validity, it is said, and many are not reviewed by the Food and Drug Administration before they're offered. The tests might be sold without independent confirmation of their claims, the officials said, a fact that poses more risk to military members than regular customers. Inaccuracies could negatively affect the required disclosure of those members' medical information. Oops. Moreover, there is increased concern in the scientific community that outside parties, outside parties, we all know who they are exploiting the use of genetic materials for questionable purposes, including mass surveillance and the ability to track individuals without their authorization or awareness. And the officials told military personnel to refrain from using the kits until otherwise notified. This is kind of interesting, and a possible sign that the Pentagon is becoming aware of the wider hidden fun and games surrounding the DNA testing, as reported by our show and some others in the alt media. Lawmakers, last piece before we go into a fairly lengthy intel section. Lawmakers on both sides of the aisle came away with vastly different interpretations of two classified briefings that top administration officials held on Wednesday about the airstrike last week that killed top Iranian general Qasem Soleimani. Now, speaking alongside Rand Paul and Senator Mike Lee, said, I had hoped and expected to receive more information outlining the legal, factual and moral justification for the attack, and left somewhat unsatisfied on that front. And he added, it was probably the worst briefing I've seen, at least on a military issue, in the 9 years I've served in the United States Senate. I found this insulting and demeaning. Now, what is insulting and demeaning is these lawyers have a say at all. Under the Constitution, they are legally not allowed in office. Lawyers operate under bar and subsequently classed as a title of nobility. Title of nobility? I haven't seen anything noble from any of them. We'll have more on that incident shortly, but first we're going to have a music break. Hi all, and welcome to the Intel section tonight, which is a lot longer than normal. Well, first we're going to replay, because some will have missed some of the intel from last week. That was in part 4 or part 5, whatever, whichever one it was. And the latest clownery is Nosara is happening in January or February this year. No, that will not be happening. And neither will the Saint Germain Trust or the Heritage Trust and all the other nonsense that the alt media clowns push out. And we mentioned about the clowns pulling off a fake RV, except it had no pay, as there's no funds. And Kim ended up reversing it all out and then issued this. All of the money borrowed by the Black Sun and Rothschilds on behalf of the militaries, agencies, UN, World Bank, IMF, the Federal Reserve and central banks worldwide for the last 500 years that the trust bought and paid for was all called in, all the debt. All bonds, treasuries, central bank bonds and the likes that the trust funded against, including the bonds against the birth certificates, were also called in on New Year's Eve. Now, either the debtor, which is the banks, agencies or central banks, need to pay up, or they need to get the Black Sun or Rothschilds to pay on their behalf. And they were given until Friday last week to sort that all out. Now, if they don't pay and things are sorted out, then there's the issue that the military or agency or central bank will be paid out of X country's government funds, such as the Republic of the United States Fund. The funds will pay off the debt, but that will retain ownership of said military, agency or central banks to its respective government. In other words, those entities will be nationalised, no longer private entities. If a private bank such as JP Morgan, Wells Fargo, Deutsche Bank or Bank of America, those organisations and their notes will be paid by the American People's National Debt Relief Fund, and the American people will own the bank stock. All of it will be filed properly with the SEC. In the case of Deutsche Bank Germany, that will come out of the German People's Funds. In case of the Sberbank, the Russian People's Funds, HSBC, the China People's Funds, and so on. But those banks will be owned by the peoples of the respective countries. We can then renegotiate all lending terms with all banks that are owned by the people, including who runs it. Essentially, it turns that bank into a cooperative bank, and all the people have shares in it. And that would mean bye-bye to greedy CEOs and several levels of management. Now, the total amount of debt being called in worldwide is about $16.8 quadrillion, which is 15 zeros. So it's up to the Black Sun Empire or the Rothschilds to pay up, or the military central banks have to pay. Either way, they have to sort that out, and that is still ongoing. And we congratulated them on their reverse RV, and Kim said the only way to win the game is to not play, and we're playing our own game of chess. Your move. I can tell you that didn't go down too well. This piece was written on a media site, and House Speaker Nancy Pelosi isn't just condemning President Trump's decision to, rightfully it says, take out Iranian terrorist leader Qasem Soleimani. She's submitting a resolution to tie his hands in the future. In other words, she's attempting to limit President Trump's ability to protect Americans at home and abroad from Iranian terrorists planning lethal attacks. And last week, the Trump administration conducted a provocative and disproportionate military airstrike targeting high-level Iranian military officials, Pelosi wrote in a letter to her Democrat colleagues, falsely painting Iran as the victims of US aggression. And she went on, this week the House will introduce and vote on a war powers resolution to limit the President's military actions regarding Iran, and this resolution is similar to the resolution introduced by Senator Tim Kaine, and it reasserts Congress's long-established oversight responsibilities by mandating that if no further congressional action is taken, the administration's military hostilities with regards to Iran cease within 30 days. Now, President Trump's decision to take out Soleimani, along with Abu Mahdi al-Muhandis, was a defensive action against an imminent threat in the aftermath of a US embassy attack in Baghdad, considering Soleimani's plans to launch attacks throughout Syria, Lebanon and Iraq against American targets. The strike was deemed as proportional. Now for the real issue behind that strike, which you won't get off Portal, people. Soleimani was a Red Dragon disciple, and that's got nothing to do with the clown on the internet, the fake ambassador. For those of you who have seen the pictures of his demise online, which was a security breach, I might add, and will be dealt with, Soleimani wore a ruby red ring, and that is signifying he was part of the Red Dragon group. Now, Mr. Soleimani has been replaced, and a deal has been made with that replacement, and all the hostilities will be over soon. It will not escalate like the Portal people are making out. You know, their posturing and fear porn is beyond pathetic now. Their lies, twists and spins making them look exactly what they are: treasonous, anti-human slime balls. What started all that? The US embassy attack in Baghdad on December the 31st was ordered by General Mattis. Yes, you heard that right. Designed to provoke more conflict and force the president and others to attack another fake enemy target. I'll repeat that again. General Mattis ordered an attack on our own embassy. For those with the right clearance, go and check it for yourselves. We ask how and why is that allowed? This is the same guy that was involved in trying to take out the president 12 months ago. So is it generals gathered in the masses, or will generals gather in the Mattis and drag Pompeo and Kushner in with them, in my opinion? Then we had the alleged retaliation fired on the Iraqi base housing US troops that miraculously killed no one. 22 missiles and no one injured or dead. And even more miraculously, it was not detected by the so-called most sophisticated surveillance and shielding systems. And no anti-missile weapons were launched to block alleged incoming missiles. That alone tells you something was awry. Now, the media, of course, showed footage and then saying the takeoff of missiles was from Iran and landed on the Iraqi base, but provide no actual proof, which is the key. Showing something taken off and announcing it was Iran does not constitute proof. No one asked them, how did they know it was in Iran? And if they did, why wasn't anti-missiles launched to stop it? The reality was it was a staged event, 100%. Next piece. There is heavy chatter that the Rothschilds will be announcing to the generals globally a full cancellation of the program known as the RV. We expect that soon. It has already been mentioned in certain higher circles. Yet again, clowns are planning some ritual event between the 10th and the 17th of January, and yet again we have a call on certain alt media for mass meditation at the same time period. Spread the love and light yourselves, shine your beacons, and a message of no consent during those days. It's got nothing to do with the age of Aquarius 0. The new word on the block was hinted at for you to prepare for in part 5, and that is desperation. Sheer panic ensues now as Operation Self-Protection and Preservation mode sinks in with the former control system. This panic and desperation will not go away for quite a few weeks, maybe even months. But there is a potential for the endgame to unfold in late February. Like I said, it's a potential. But perhaps you can all use your manifest skills to push that along. Now, cautious optimism hangs in the air on many levels now. But we always have to be aware of the cornered beast and a propensity to strike out as a last measure. From our point of view, we are ready for that. And it will be important you all prepare yourselves for all eventualities, which has possibilities of bank failures, small-scale war and disruption as the dying beast lashes back. All efforts are being made to prevent that. And like I said, the Iran-Iraq issue will cease to be a problem fairly soon. In my opinion, it will be a futile exercise. They know they have lost, and they are desperate for a way out or back. But those doors and gates will be closed to them. But we must always be prepared. The Black Sun minions have figured out now there is no destroyer. There is no extinction level event which they were promised and working towards. And no one is coming to pick them up. Oops. They're another group who perhaps would have been better listening to our show. We've been telling them who would hear that since 2013. No one's coming to save you or them. And they are left here to lie in their own steaming pile of mess they created for themselves and will ultimately fail, which Kim also told them all along. Now, there was a very, very ancient plan of the light forces to trap all the darkness in one region of space and not let them out. Many of the original old souls, darkened by their poor choices and actions, became trapped here within their own construct. An update on the revocation. That was a tremendous success, and it was the quietest harvesting period ever, which then led to more work being done to tip the balance of power further. Now, we spoke of the 7 days between the 21st and 28th of December last year being a key factor of time for the light and the dark. Much work was achieved by the light forces in terms of prevention of actions and also counter-actions that led to the elimination of the leader of the Order of the Black Sun, another one bites the dust, known as the Dark Prince. That took place on the final day, December the 28th. Now that has triggered much of the behind-the-scenes mayhem that has unfolded since. Like I said, panic has set in. The Dark Prince, we are reliably informed, was one of the parents, and we were led to believe he left back in 2016. Now, I was told he was gone, but it appears that term was double-edged and part riddle, and no surprise given the source at the time, as he was the only male parent left out of the last 10 of them. Well, now he is no more for definite. All the Order of the Black Sun know that now. The next 3 in line to replace him realised their whole plan was not going to work, and all 3 have quit. So now their destroyer, the Dark Prince, Marduk and Anu are all gone. So has their plans. They have no plan, only a desire to stay in control of their own illusion, particularly since 2012. The reality dawned on them that they were losing back in 2003 via the Looking Glass. But one could also argue for it being 1996 also. But by the end of 2012, that was confirmed, and what followed was a clean-up operation of behind-the-scenes characters, the majority of which people have no clue about. That is and was the inner war. Clean-up of outer war may burst forth in the near future. With the unnatural black hole in our universe also now gone, a natural black hole has a white hole on the other side and is another universe for evolution of galaxies, stars, planets and life. This was unnatural, created, artificial. With that gone, we expect now for the first time in aeons, new growth to come into this universe. It will expand, not contract. And maybe a return of what was here in the past to herald the arrival of that and other things. A new star will appear in the night sky. If visible, it will be between Sirius and Orion, very low down. Keep checking the moon. What couldn't be seen now potentially can be seen. Restructuring is going on within the hierarchy currently, following a spate of deaths on Tuesday within the Black Sun and the Rothschild groups, none of whom would be known within the public circles. The war between them two will rumble on for quite a bit, yeah. And there is much focus on Iran as not having a Rothschild's bank, and that is because it's run by the Black Sun. Eventually all banks will be out of the hands of the harvesters and the world can move on in a more transparent and fairer way. That war between the Black Sun and Rothschilds will get ugly. Both are evil and neither can be redeemed. Their whole fight is over the illusion they are still in control. What these people don't get is, whoever wins that duel will be known as the lead group of losers. It's like a third and fourth place playoff game. It has no point or purpose. Not that they will see it that way. Like I said, those people, and in some cases, not people, cannot be redeemed. Expect a lot of chaos of the good and bad variety as the transition of power is shifting and is also underway. Langley, we hear, is restructuring, as I understand, which will improve some things and will also be part of the shift, phasing in and phasing out process. Hottest word on the lips of many of the so-called control system was the trust this week, in a largely more favourable light or option. So we'll see how that all unfolds. Kim never stated that the funds will be coming out soon, or in 2 weeks for that matter. The funds will be out when it is out and will be officially announced when it is done, not before. With all that being said, and the restructuring going on for the various representatives of the old system, I'm requesting a member of the public engaged in the alt media, preferably out of THI, as our members know a lot more of the hidden world than other groups, to be a people-based representative in all meetings for balance in all countries. This planet is designated to be operated and looked after by humans. Now, the previous regimes that all failed had military agencies, puppet politicians and families all representing themselves, their rogue paymasters, and not humanity. We should not and cannot let the same organisations chart the path for our future, mired in dogma, mind control and following dark agenda scripts. It failed. And we don't intend to fail by allowing them to repeat it. So to bring balance, I'm requesting from the system, the old system, that we need the average person out of the community that is not agency or faction based, involved in high level meetings and discussions as a representative of we the people in all countries. And I'm hoping by this it will bring some common sense into the proceedings. And it's time the people had a voice and are saying things of how things run on this planet, not just the system. We'll be back shortly. Hi all and welcome back. There's much going on. That was just a portion of it revealed. Like I said, we have to be ready for all events. But I suspect the sea of change and the tide of turning has reached a nadir. They've been boxed into a corner that they cannot escape from. No one's coming to pick them up. No one's going to save them. All their so-called leaders have now been eliminated. A lot of their programs have also been eliminated, particularly the harvesting system called banking. To facilitate wars that they are looking for, they need lots of funds. They don't have any. So that avenue is cut off. And more of the minions are now finally seeing through the illusion. No RV, no extinction level events, no World War III. Zip, nada, no nothing. And unless they come to the table, which is what this show has said all along, they have to come to us eventually. They have no option. None of them will get paid ever. It's that simple. We're going to push this planet forward and humanity forward for the first time in a long, long time. And that doesn't require secret societies and factions and Illuminati and so-called families playing power and control games. There's enough for everyone to share. There's no need for this greed. You've all been duped. You realise that now. And you all owe significant amounts of funds, all you so-called families. You're all massively in debt to the trust. The simple thing now is come and speak to us and step down from the old system. It's gone. It's done. It's pointless carrying on operating a failed old program, and it has failed. There's no back doors, no magic this, no alignments with Uranus, right up your Uranus, more is the point. It's not happening. Your magic, your demons, your jinns don't work anymore. Your rituals don't work anymore either. Because every time you do one, lots of people die. Not the people. So like I said to the generals in the last piece, come and see us. We're more than amenable and flexible. We know you all followed orders. Orders that were designed to string you along like the carrots for jackasses, whilst your former so-called leader M collected everything off you and then hung you out to dry. So you have a choice now. You can string along and suffer the consequences, and there will be consequences for delaying humanity's progress, or you can come forward and work with us to create a plan, a global plan, where everyone has an equal share. Everyone has an equal say, not just militaries and agencies and clan families. We the people have a say in how this planet should be run. Everyone is equal going forward. None of this Draco reptilian hierarchy rubbish. Or let's all wear large fancy rings signifying we're a part of this group and that group. It was all an illusion. Ooh, there's an enemy. Those people don't like you. You shouldn't like them, so you go and attack them. And that's essentially what's going on with the Rothschilds and the Black Sun. Carry on taking each other out, we don't care. As long as you don't interfere with the public, you can carry on. Like I said, it's a 3rd and 4th place playoff. Ultimately, you're still a loser. Their choice. We've got a update from Nayek from Holland about Africa, and a couple of pointers that we've pulled up for this. And the use of GMO in cotton that's ongoing, particularly in Kenya, and also heard from sources in Mali and Burkina Faso. Now, Burkina Faso has stopped using GMO cotton seeds, which is a good thing. However, Kenya just gave the green light for it. And it said Kenya, the government makes a landmark decision to approve genetically modified or BT cotton. And this resolution does not specifically address Kenya's 2012 ban on GM crops. But a moratorium is essentially over because the cabinet memo says other GMOs will be considered on a case-by-case basis, according to the Kenya Agricultural Research Institute. Now, according to that particular institute, BT cotton has a potential to increase income in the textile industry from the current SH 3.5 billion to SH 2 trillion. I think that's shekels. I could be wrong. By 2022, and create 500,000 cotton jobs and 100,000 new jobs in cloth making. They'll always state that nonsense, but those figures never ever materialise. But by that time, you've already gone along with it. It's the seducement package. You know, if you can do that, you can go and make hemp. Would that not create 500,000 jobs and 100,000 new jobs in cloth making? Same thing. Now, the once thriving cotton industry collapsed between the late 1980s and 90s after the liberalisation of the agriculture sector following introduction of SAPs that were done by, no surprise here, the World Bank and the IMF. Proving this show correct again. The people of Africa need to throw those two organisations along with the UN, which is the part of the same World Bank and IMF, and throw them all out. They're all harvesting companies, and death and destruction as well. Then we got a report of the GDP in Africa, written by Pascal Nurasira, and he wrote, "Did you know that in 1994 Africa was poorer than it was in 1974? So much for Live Aid. The per capita GDP, as measured in US dollars, was $1,166 in 1994, and yet in 1974 it was $1,531. $400 less 20 years later, despite Live Aid. As this show has told you, that Live Aid was another slush fund. It appears none of it went to the African people. Now, some economists blame structural adjustment programs imposed yet again by the IMF and the World Bank for causing this decline. The belt tightening programs emphasise the short term to the detriment of investment in education, health and also agriculture. And this short-termism combined with weak institutions inherited from colonialism created a conducive environment for corrupt leaders to flourish that further worsened the situation there. You know, in the last 25 years, Africa is slowly but steadily recovering from the lost years, with the per capita GDP reaching $1,657 per person last year, which is only $126, higher than it was in 1974. With the population it is said set to explode in the coming decades, I wouldn't count on that. The current rate of economic progress is still far from enough. The task ahead for African leaders is to rethink growth from scratch, and you won't be doing that by short-term measures, by agreeing to GMO cotton either. And test unconventional ideas that democratize opportunities for all. Simply imitating what worked in Asia won't save the masses from a hard life, as the geopolitical conditions are different today than they were 50 years ago, when Africa screwed up while the rest of the world saw relentless progress. I wouldn't necessarily agree that it was all Africa. It was a deliberate program ran by the UN, the IMF and the World Bank, in league with the Black Dragon Group of China, which is why they've put lots of funds in there. So when you can't pay the debts, they just take the assets. I would pay close attention to all your ports, as they did it in India. Infograph, as in the file Africa stats based on the World Bank and FAO, was used as attached. Now, the role of the IMF and World Bank and their structural adjustment programs, which means put everyone in debt and take all assets, were already questioned and played out in an informal court in the movie called Bamako, which was came out in 2006. And Niek said he watched the movie again some weeks ago, and some of the remarks made in the movie could and should be made again today. Now, there's been heavy investment in chemical fertilizer in Africa, and information from a person whom Niek met in Ghana said he was very worried about the completion of the largest chemical inorganic fertilizer plant in Africa that will indeed, on one hand, enhance production of crop production on the short term, there we go again, short-termism, but will destroy the earth as well if it's not applied with sufficient amounts of organic matter. And this person said in his past life as a soil scientist, he had never seen that land fertilized with chemical fertilizer will maintain a nutrients balance, i.e. outputs of nutrients equals inputs. There is always more nutrients exported from the soil than applied. Now, in Guinea-Conakry, part of a region is destroyed by fertilizers in the past, and now regenerative measures are desperately needed. And he says here rethinking is also needed for safeguarding agricultural production in the future. And then he gave an update as the year ends, an update on Africa's biggest petrochemical fertilizer factory, and the main component, which is the world's biggest crude oil distillation train tower, has been shipped to the site and successfully installed last month. This was what was mainly causing the delay, therefore production of raw materials and fertilizer is possible to begin next year. With the project's stated capacity, pace and concessions, the future quality of soil, food and natural water reserves or reservoirs in West Africa and even Africa as a whole is looking very bleak in reality. And he said, although very challenging times ahead, we will still enter and face the coming year with hope and determination. And is hoping that the people wake up to what's going on in that country. Like I said, we've warned about the UN, the IMF, World Bank and also Citibank. All of them need to be thrown out. Citibank is the like the Federal Reserve of Africa, where all the funds have to filter through their bank, so it looks like they've got loads of money when it actually belongs elsewhere. That's how it works. More than half of sub-Saharan Africans lack access to electricity. Africa will require an unprecedented effort to meet the UN's targets of electricity for all by 2030. Since whenever the UN have been interested in people. In most parts of the world, energy demand is growing too quickly to keep greenhouse gas emissions from international targets, according to a report released by the International Energy Agency, a think tank group. So we can take no notice of them then. Many in Africa, however, worry about the opposite problem, the acute shortage of electricity, and the continent is home to almost a fifth of the world's population, but accounts for less than 4% of global electricity use. So it's almost 20% of the world's population, but only 4% electricity. Now, North Africa enjoys near universal access to electricity, yet more than half of the sub-Saharan population, 600 million people, live in the dark. That has to be addressed, and quickly. In a special broadcast recently, Kevin Annett and the Provincial Council for the Republic of Kanata issued an announcement regarding 3 important events over the coming month. The first one's gone. Here We Stand, the public voice of Republic of Kanata, will resume its live broadcasts from Sunday, January the 5th. And the interactive programme, he said, features the frontline fighters who are stopping crimes against humanity and creating a new society from the grassroots. So you can go to bbsradio.com/Here We Stand and listen to the archive of that. Now, on January the 15th, the 5th anniversary of the establishment of the Republic of Kanata, 3 new citizenship training schools will be convened by the Republic in Vancouver, Winnipeg and Toronto. The 2-week-long school will educate, train and accredit new citizens and Republic officers with the tools they need to reclaim the nation and build the Republic of Kanata in their communities. Now, to enrol in that school or take out citizenship in the Republic, write to republicofkanata@gmail.com or thecommonland@gmail.com. On January the 23rd, the 25th anniversary of the firing without cause of Kevin Annett by the criminally convicted United Church of Canada, Kevin will convene a global press conference at a location and time to be announced. At that event, Kevin will be announcing a new series of actions to resurface the history of ongoing genocidal crimes by church, state and corporations in Canada, and to prosecute those individuals and groups responsible. A report came out this week of issues in America, that America will run out of people to join the workforce. And the picture for the labour market is on a collision course with a dimming demographic outlook, which we've already said previously. Their figures of how many are here and globally do not stack up. Now, whilst jobs are growing faster than expected, the population is growing more slowly, and this is indicative of the whole of the Western world. Now, in July of last year, the number of Americans, it is alleged to be at 327 million, which is 2.1 million fewer than the Census Bureau predicted in 2014 and 7.8 million fewer than it predicted in 2008. Now, the US fertility rate, the number of children each woman can be expected to have over her lifetime, has dropped from 2.1 in 2007 to 1.7 in 2018, which is the lowest on record. From 2010 through 2018, there were 3 million fewer births and 171,000 more deaths than the Census Bureau had projected back in 2008. So much for overpopulation. Now, death rates already rising because the population is older have been pressured further by what is known as deaths of despair, suicide, drug overdoses, and also alcohol-related illnesses. Indeed. This next short piece needs to be listened to closely. The CIA's Remote Devices Branch, Umbrage, UMBRAGE, group collects and maintains a substantial library of attack techniques stolen from malware produced in other states, including the Russian Federation. With Umbrage and the related projects, the CIA can not only increase its total number of attack types, but also misdirect attribution by leaving behind the fingerprints of the groups that the attack techniques were stolen from. Now, Umbrage components cover keyloggers, password collection, webcam captures, data destruction, persistence, privilege escalation, stealth, antivirus, PSP, avoidance and survey techniques. And fingerprints are meaningless. What this states is, and very clearly, is the CIA is able to pose as a hacker in any other country, including Russia. (2016) anyone? Some figures from down under that I was sent, and it's all so indicative of what's happened in other countries that give up their weapons. And it's now been 12 months since gun owners in Australia were forced by a new law to surrender 640,000 personal firearms to be destroyed by our own government in a programme that is costing Australia taxpayers more than $500 million. How's it costing that much? Again, nobody asked these questions. 500 million. And the first year results are now in Australia-wide. Once the guns were gone, homicides are up 6.2%. Assaults are up 9.6%. Armed robberies are up 44%. You see what happens? In the state of Victoria alone, homicides with firearms are now up 300%. Because what happens is the law-abiding citizens or ignorant people, oblivious to the dangers, turned them in, whilst the criminals did not. And so all the criminals still possess their guns. You would think people will have a bit more upstairs than that. Now, while figures over the previous 25 years showed a steady decrease in armed robbery with firearms, this has now changed drastically upward in the past 12 months, since the criminals are now guaranteed that the prey is unarmed. And there is also a report stating there has been a dramatic increase in break-ins and assaults of the elderly whilst the resident is at home. We'll be back. Hi all and welcome back. This next few pieces will not surprise many listening to this show. And it's given all that has been mentioned, it's not surprising to learn that the cops in Tampa, Florida are now undergoing what is known as Holocaust training. All sponsored by the Anti-Defamation League. Now, conveniently, there's a Holocaust museum located just down the road in St. Petersburg, where the first group of officers was taken. But since when has that organisation become the must-go-to for training? Actually, it's not training, it's brainwashing. It's like the other police forces are being sent to Mossad-based police training schools. Also, Mossad and their military force is a subsidiary of the British SAS. They even have the same or similar badge. They certainly got the same motto. Same people as why. So why have they been sent there? Well, to be trained in cold-hearted programs is what? Like the SAS, ISIS, which is Israeli Secret Intelligence Services, Blackwater, Z, P2 Lodge, CIA are all trained assassins. And the Black Sun version is known as the Order of the Assassins. They remove targets by any means necessary, and collateral damage is just one of them things. It's how they work. They're cold-hearted killers, incapable of reasoning or empathy, which is why they do that job. You can't train people to do that. It's already in some people. That's where the profiling comes in. You can't teach an empath to go and shoot somebody in cold blood. And they're passing that training onto our police forces at a time when their sense of superiority over everyone else is already off the charts. Because in their world, badges are important, and that's what makes you superior to everyone else. In my world, those badges are more carrots for jackasses. That program has to stop. And so does this next program. Same thing, same people. Zionist-based Jewish groups in the United States are adept at creating mechanisms that benefit themselves and also frequently Israel at the expense of the American taxpayer. I would suggest you queue up for my MeWe GIF. You're not going to like this. The proliferating Holocaust museums are a perfect example. Sometimes built by private donations, but then paid for and operated by the local government. Now, the National Holocaust Museum in Washington, for example, is supported by the American taxpayers to the tune of $54 million per year. Oops. That's just one. When one considers that the so-called Holocaust occurred nearly 80 years ago and did not involve the United States at all, it's kind of a remarkable achievement to memorialize the claimed uniqueness of Jewish suffering, which then is used to justify other abuses and excuse Israel's ongoing war crimes. And for those who deny that claims of the uniqueness of Jewish suffering are exploited and even promoted in order to be able to influence public opinion, whilst also obtaining special favours from the government, one might cite specific instances where that has most definitely been the case. Jewish organisations receive over 90% of discretionary grants from the Department of Homeland Security. Jewish organisations receive over 90% of discretionary grants from the Department of Homeland Security. And Israel benefits from $3.8 billion in aid annually, plus another $10 billion through bogus charities, trade concessions and US government-funded projects that are approved by Congress that the American public knows little to nothing about, and is benefiting the Zionists worldwide as part of an agenda. Now, apart from the creation of the State of Israel itself, which was opposed by most of the US foreign policy establishment, the first major effort to condition US foreign policy to benefit Jewish people specifically, or should I say Zionists, came with the Jackson-Vanik Amendment of 1975, which made some aspects of relations with the Soviet Union conditional on that country's willingness to let Jews emigrate. Remember, they flooded Russia with Jewish people after the fake so-called Bolshevik Revolution, which was done by the Zionists. Now, what is far more outrageous was the so-called Lautenberg Amendment, enshrined in the 1990 Public Law 101 through 167, that granted refugee status to Russian Jews even though they were not actually being persecuted or in any way endangered. That was pushed through in 1990. Now, that refugee status is significant, as what it provides is food stamps, housing, social security, Medicaid and educational benefits, along with a free ticket into America. If only I'd been given free refugee status, it would have saved me near $150,000 for the start. And it was estimated that 350 to 400,000 Jewish people who entered the United States received that refugee package. Remember, Israel was ultimately classed as a British enclave, which is why the SAS trained the Israeli Special Forces and is a subsidiary of the Crown. and ultimately was a cash collection scheme and also designed to weaken financially America. Remember Israel Cohen, Next Step America? That was in 1912. And it's all about control, you see. So we can't blame the Jewish people for that. They're oblivious to what's going on. And it was all designed by the old system to crush and crash America. And it's still ongoing. Now, what has to happen to correct this is a complete financial restructuring of this country and an end to foreign aid until American people are given back some of what was stolen from them. Period. And then we come to this gem. Remember what was said at the beginning? The American taxpayer was funding the Washington Holocaust Museum for $54 million per year. The notion of establishing a memorial in the historical Jewish homeland for Jewish victims for the Nazi Holocaust was conceived during World War II as a response to reports of the mass murder of Jews in Nazi-occupied countries. Yad Vashem was the first to propose it in September 1942. There was no deaths at that early stage in the war. Oops. It was a deliberate plan. And this was proposed at a board meeting of the Jewish National Fund by Mordechai Shenhavi, who was a member of the Kibbutz Mishmar HaEmek. In August of 1945, the plan was discussed in greater detail at a Zionist meeting in London. So there you have it. Yet again, From Russia with Love, proven correct again. This was all pre-planned by the Zionists to get the world to pay them over and over again for their alleged suffering. But the Zionists never suffered. The people did. And then they've managed to convince whole chunks of the world that no one else on the planet died or suffered in World War II. And if you think these people for 1 second are interested in the plight of the Jewish people then or now, you're not thinking straight. This is another slush fund. $54 million a year for something that was planned deliberately, as that article states. 1942. The deaths didn't appear until 45, 46, and even then they were much lower than their official figures. A massive slush fund to propagate their agenda of world domination using fear, trauma and diversion tactics as a front to dupe the whole world. And it's time people woke up to it, particularly in America. And like I said, that doesn't mean to say we have to hate on the Jewish people. Wrong thinking. We've all been used as pawns. None more so than them. To get a gist or another reminder of how these Zionist people think, here's a few quotes out of the Talmud. that the Jewish nation is the only nation selected by God. Remember, the real meaning of nation is not country, but a race. While all the remaining ones are contemptible and hateful. In other words, anyone not Jewish is contemptible and hateful. That all property of other nations belongs to the Jewish nation. That's exactly what they're doing with these slush funds. They're just siphoning it out. Was something that happened 80 years ago. Which consequently is entitled to seize upon it without any scruples. Their words, not mine. An Orthodox Jew is not bound to observe principles of morality towards people of other tribes. He may act contrary to morality if profitable to himself or Jews in general. If a Goy killed a Goy or a Jew, he is responsible. But if a Jew killed a Goy, he's not responsible. When the Messiah comes, which he won't, every Jew will have 2,800 slaves. Nice. Extermination of the Christians is a necessary sacrifice. Even the best of the Goyim, Gentiles, should be killed. Jehovah, who is Yahweh, created the non-Jew in human form so that the Jew would not have to be served by beasts. The non-Jew is consequently an animal in human form and condemned to serve the Jew day and night. And then this classic to end it. A boy Goy after 9 years and 1 day, and a girl after 3 years and 1 day are considered filthy. After those ages are passed, it is okay to sexually use and abuse those children. This is known within the circle as pedestry, glorified pedophilia. That's just a small sample of their rhetoric and ideals. The Torah is the watered down version. And I don't believe for 1 second the average Jewish person thinks that way. And like I've said, they were blind puppets to that whole program. But as for these museums, they have to be shut down. People died. Lots of people died in World War II, not just one group of people. I don't see World War II funds for the American soldiers or people, or the German soldiers or people, or the British soldiers, or people all over the world. Or where's the funds or the museum for the Japanese that clowns in America dropped 2 huge atomic bombs on? Where's that museum? You can't have one and ignore all the others. Now, following many requests in the From Russia with Love series for Jewish people to step up, I'm pleased that I was shown a number of examples recently on a Facebook post. And given what is going on in Iran and Iraq plus Yemen, then throw in a recent piece by Senator Tlaib talking about making America all Muslim. All of these are, on the face of it, can seem random. They're not. So I'm pleased the Jewish people are standing up. Who gains by attacking Iran? Who gains by making America look bullies? Who gains by stating an inflammatory comment, which is not an opinion of Tlaib, but an agency-based scripted tactic? The old system caliphate of Israel that has got nothing to do with books or religions, but a dark force systems plot. And that has gone on for thousands of years. Now, Tlaib, like our boss Obama, despite being Muslim, are setting the Muslim people up for destruction on a war-based level and turning ignorant people, particularly in the alt media, against the Muslims. Like what was prophesied back in the 1880s by Albert Pike. Same shit, different day. And it's important that people recognise it as a programme. And it should not be a tool to turn on Muslims, countries or regions, and learn to see behind the mirror and the smokescreen, as it always brings you to the truth. Given what went on in Iran, it was no surprise that some of the clowns in the alt media doing memes against immigrants, illegal or otherwise, into America. You know, it's getting beyond ridiculous at this point. This whole country was built on and by immigrants. Otherwise, we would all be still living in teepees. But how quickly people forget their ancestors' role in coming here from most other countries around the world, and many from very, very poor countries who still live in abject poverty and squalor, to then turn around and say, we don't want foreigners in our country. One, it's not your country. The world belongs to everyone, not people contained within lines on a piece of paper called a map. Or was it an M-app? 2, that is service to self and fascism, and following mainstream media created scripts, and not as awake as they thought they were, clearly. 3, perhaps we should run a programme of those who don't wish to share the planet, and do a life and country swap with those spewing that nonsense with someone from a poor country. Perhaps then they might think beyond their tiny brain cells and get some perspective on life. 4 is a question. How can you be illegal on your own planet? 5, I myself is technically an immigrant, as I still hold a British passport. Should I be deported for not being born here? Think different. The other programme you mentioned earlier, an ugly road and programme of racism that our show has campaigned heavily against in the past year, as the portal people and agency think tank clowns state racism is only done by one colour when the evidence is overwhelming that all participate in it. And it's something we can all address. Now, the next piece after this is a soccer-based piece. And there is much being said back in the UK and the EU currently about the crowd abusing black players, which is completely unacceptable. But what is overlooked in this one-track, one-thought-based narrative is all groups get abused in some way or other during a soccer game. And yet, curiously, it just gets completely overlooked. Those like me born in Liverpool are called Scousers, which is a pointer to the Irish contingent in the region, most of which were those left behind from the white slave trade out of Liverpool to New York. Now, because of our rebellious nature and the media and government hit pieces on the region, Scousers are not popular with most other regions of the country, and rival teams often sing anti-Scouse songs openly and very audible on the TV. Songs about being thieves to celebrating that we are a poverty-based region, plus more colourful language and descriptions of us, and yet no one stops and thinks of that as being racist against the people of Liverpool. No one. To use a Hillary term, what is the difference? The difference is the authorities made an agenda and don't think for 1 minute they are interested in protecting black players or people. They're just not. And like I said before, this is part of the Israel Cohen program initiated in 1912, where he said, we must realise that our party's, which is Zionism, most powerful weapon is racial tensions. By propounding into the consciousness of the dark races that for centuries they have been oppressed by whites, we can mould them into the program of the Communist Party. We will invest to instill in the whites a guilt complex over their exploitation of the Negroes. We will aid the Negroes to rise in prominence in every walk of life. All there, right in your face. And that program has and is still playing out. All designed to get the white and black communities fighting each other, whilst the hidden hand behind it all plays both sides and laughs at us. Again, think different. Now, Moshe Hogeg is a man on a mission, it is said, and he's made millions as an entrepreneur in the technology sector. And in August last year, he splashed a large portion of it out on a football club, soccer club. Except it wasn't any old club, it was Beitar Jerusalem, one of Israel's top sides, but one which is best known for its anti-Arab, anti-Muslim bias and for its violent, racist supporters. Oops. And the challenge he set himself was to turn it around to change the club's narrative. And generally they play on a Wednesday night in what's known as the Teddy Stadium, and the ground sandwiched between a busy road and a shopping mall. And it's arguably the biggest club in Israel, with historic political ties to the right-wing Likud party. Yes, Mr. Nutty Asshole. And one that has never signed an Arab player, ever. And sections of the crowd would regularly scream, "Death to Arabs." Their banners read, "Forever Pure." And it is a huge problem which the previous owners tried to address, but none has been as successful as Mr. Hogeg. Now, his strategy from the outset was to confront the issue head-on, and there was a fire at the Beitar Jerusalem soccer ground in February 2013 when police said arsonists torched the club officers over the signing of two Muslim footballers from Chechnya. And he said, "I have zero tolerance for racism, absolutely zero, and my reaction towards racism is not proportional. You shout one racist comment and I will sue you for $1 million, he said. what this shows is racism is not one way, as I've stated previously. Those fans could do with finding out some real truth in the From Russia with Love series. But a big kudos to Mr. Hogegg for trying to address the problem. Whilst we all remain divided, the dark forces will still play us. Just quit it. This was a piece from Canada. I don't know which part. It's probably Vancouver. Den of Iniquity up there with some of the programs that are running, and an awful lot of alt media clowns as well. But a group of international exorcists has raised the alarm about a new children's book teaching kids how to interact with and summon demons. Oh dear. Saying the publication is not only a spiritual threat, but it is a disguised attempt to lure young people into Satanism. And they said, you don't mess around with demons. Too right, you don't. Whoever invites a child to summon a demon is like a person who puts a grenade in their hands to play with. Sooner or later the child will pull the pin and the bomb will explode in their hands, according to the International Association of Exorcists. Whoever invites a child to summon a demon is telling them that it's possible to get help from a criminal to get something. And whoever invites a child to summon a demon is causing them to lose their identity and to be morally, psychologically and spiritually destroyed, they said. Correct. Adding that those who invite children to summon demons are already an ally of the demons. Again, correct. Now, the statement released December the 11th and signed by Father Francesco Beaumonte was in reference to a new children's book titled A Children's Book of Demons that was published in May, and the book is directed to children aged 5 through 10 and was penned by Aaron Layton, an award-winning illustrator and a fan of known occult practices, and yet it made it into school. In the book it states, don't want to take the trash out tonight, maybe you're swimming in homework. Perhaps that big bully is being a real drag to you. Well, grab your coloured pencils and sigil drawing skills and dial up some demons. This paranormal parody is filled to the brim with funny spirits more silly than scary. Now, several websites carrying the book have described it as a playful guide that allows readers, most of whom will presumably be children, given it was designed for 5 to 10-year-olds, to conjure what they describe as gentle demons, no such thing, by drawing sigils or magic symbols after they wake up in the mornings. And the book is decked with colourful images of some 20 different demons, and the book urges children to summon these dark creatures in order to do everything from making themselves sick in order to get out of school and be able to eat ice cream all day, to hypnotising others and giving themselves genius level smartness. The seducement again. Wells de Fargo, are these people smoking? Getting children to call in the demons now? It's all very King Solomon, that to me. Because yes, he did use children. Not the whole system is not content with getting a truant child to push through their fake agendas globally, or another child from the TED Talks promoting LGBTQ and XYZ and Alpha and Omega to children. Force vaccinations without parents' knowledge or consent. Hello, New York. Now it's, let's use the kids to call in the demons. These people are completely sick. And it's no surprise it was a member of the church and occult practices promoting it. It's indicative. And also further proof of the From Russia with Love series. And the point of all this is you can no longer trust church people, doctors, politicians, teachers in school, the CPS, social services, the justice system, or the police. Why? Because all but a handful of them have little to no idea what they're doing, which is running an agenda on the people. And parents have to take more responsibility where they put their children and whoever else goes near them. Their old system is as corrupt as it comes, ran by people oblivious to what's going on. You've all seen and heard the evidence now, and a full-on movement needs to be garnered to protect our children away from agenda-driven programs and other more heinous exploitation of our children. We'll be back shortly. Hi all and welcome back. These is the last portion of the show tonight. And this next piece is an excerpt of a much larger piece that debated the issues of who was Yahweh. And I will make it clear who is who straight after this quote. And it said much of the scholarship of Sitchin is very good, and his books have always been really interesting, which they are. However, it stated his claim that Enlil is the Sumerian precursor of Yahweh is total nonsense. Why did Sitchin claim something so absurd with regards to the identity of the Hebrew God, in spite of having done such a painstaking job when it came to the history of the other ancient gods? Now, the answer, it said in the report, could be quite displeasing for many of his fans. We have taken into account that Sitchin could have had prejudices and hidden motives, just like any other author. Remember that Sitchin was a Jew, educated in a Jewish school in Palestine, and even claimed in one of his books that Yahweh was his God. Here we see the alliances of Sitchin very clearly. Sitchin was a member of the people of Anu and acknowledged Judaism, the original Anuist cult, as his own religion. In the end, Sitchin worked for Anu. Unquote. That last part is correct. And that family were the origin of what is known as the Jewish religion. All of it. Then you have the Anunnaki Hebrews, Anunnaki Zionists. It's all the same cult, the cult of Ra. All of the so-called Jewish religion is nothing to do with humans. It's a reptile religion, of which all other religions were created from. Why? For their divide and conquer games. Remember it was Anu who was, or is, no, actually, I will say that again, was, as he is no more, the Lord in the Bible, not Jesus. Where Anu, the Lord, said, let us go down and scatter the people in case they coalesce and work together. His religion was a way to accomplish that. Now, Anu, in the upper order circles, was known as the grandfather. That's his signature name. They never mentioned him by name. They called him grandfather. Why? Because this was in relation to their leader at the time he was around. He is no more. Marduk. Anu is Marduk's grandfather. The uncle was another term they used for Enlil. And the father, which is the father described in the Bible, was actually Enki. Oops. Final piece tonight is things are unfolding. And if you took the intention and meaning behind elements of part 5 into your acceptance, you will gauge it is all your time to step up, not just mine. I don't want you to get bogged down in thinking you're not good enough or worthy enough to lead the life of yours and our dreams. I don't want us to feel that the nightmares of our past mean we are disqualified from having a brighter and more meaningful future. The issue of accepting praise and recognition for things you have done or achieved came up this week, and our reluctance in many ways to accept it, particularly the introverts, which is the most common trait in this group. Extroverts demand that praise as they cover up weaknesses within. Like the Globe Awards people, all giving each other awards to stay relevant and appease their egos. But introverts are different and struggle to accept praise at times, and we have to learn to balance that aspect as readily as we accept the flack and abuse. We've all dragged each other down in so many ways, and that has to be changed going forward and to elevate each other. I want to see you all become the leaders of your own lives, leaders of the THI and the TPC. And I want us all to become the truest and most courageous version of ourselves. I would like you all to be flexible in terms of your decision making, living arrangements whereby you are willing to be the change, not wait for the change to fall into your comfort zone. It may require you moving to be where you need to be. That is being the change and changing your timeline. And if you want an example, you can use me. I moved to be the change, and it did change the timeline. We all have wounds. We have all experienced traumas, and reaching a level of acceptance with this and knowing that despite it all, we can all be whole again and flourish. And that is the pathway to healing under and within this energy field. We don't need to wear our wounds as a badge of honour. It has not served us well. It's allowed low vibrations and victimhood to flourish. we don't need those either. Instead, we can just allow them to become a part of who we are, integrating it, and it becomes not who we are, but who we were. From there, you create your own blueprint for your life, and then onto the collective. You will be guided to reach new levels of self-acceptance like never before, provided you are open and in acceptance. We can allow them guides and intuitions to lift us and guide us to become more compassionate, more caring, more trusting, more loving people, and far more authentic than we have been previously. Stay safe, stay strong, stay prepared, and never let anyone put you in any fear. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams, and bye for now.